James Bennett was born and raised in a poverty-stricken neighborhood on the outskirts of Birmingham, Alabama. From a young age, Bennett endured severe poverty and relentless discrimination due to the color of his skin. His father abandoned him when he was just a child, and his mother battled addiction, rarely showing concern for her son's well-being. Throughout his youth, Bennett frequently faced humiliation, contempt, and involvement in minor crimes, repeatedly coming into conflict with the law, from petty theft to street fights and public disturbances. However, through extraordinary persistence and determination, Bennett eventually transformed his life. He graduated from university with honors and secured a position as a history teacher at Westfield High School, located within a peaceful, affluent community in Alabama. To the townspeople, Bennett symbolized an inspirational story, a young black man who overcame his troubled past and society's prejudices, becoming a respected, polished, and admired educator. Yet behind Bennett's polished exterior and inspiring public persona lay a vastly different person, a cold, cruel individual, meticulously concealing his dark and twisted desires. No one in Westfield could have ever imagined that someday they would face the terrifying secrets Bennett had carefully hidden for years beneath his facade as a trustworthy teacher. The nightmare began one morning in November 2017, when Jenny Carter, a student in Bennett's history class, vanished without a trace, marking the beginning of a series of haunting and deadly events that would forever change this small town. Jenny Carter's disappearance quickly became the center of attention in the town of Westfield. Initially, police suspected that Jenny might have simply been a teenager who had run away temporarily. However, as days passed without any sign of her, fear gradually seeped into the hearts of everyone in this once peaceful town. Inspector Eric Thompson, an experienced officer, was assigned to lead the investigation. Eric began by interviewing everyone close to Jenny, her family, friends, and teachers, in the hope of finding even the smallest clue. Among those interviewed was James Bennett, who appeared exceptionally cooperative and eager to assist. He claimed that the last time he saw Jenny was after class the previous day, describing her demeanor as cheerful and entirely normal. James Bennett's calm, overly cooperative attitude did not immediately raise Eric's suspicions, but his instincts as a seasoned detective whispered that there was something off about this seemingly perfect history teacher. Nevertheless, Eric found no concrete evidence to support his suspicions, at least not at that moment. Just as the investigation reached an apparent dead end, Westfield was once again shaken by another disappearance. Sarah Phillips, another high school student, vanished exactly 6 months after Jenny Carter's disappearance. Like Jenny, Sarah was a student in James Bennett's history class, and once again, he was the last person to have seen her. Fear now gave way to outright panic. Rumors quickly spread, and townspeople began to question whether there was a connection between the two disappearances. Some residents started viewing James Bennett with suspicion, yet these remained merely suspicions without solid evidence. Bennett himself remained calm, continuing to teach every day without showing any hint of abnormality. Eric Thompson realized he had to act faster. His intuition told him that if he didn't uncover the truth soon, more girls might be at risk. But little did he know that his true confrontation with the two-faced murderer had only just begun. After Sarah Phillips's disappearance, anxiety in the town of Westfield reached unprecedented heights. Residents became cautious, adopting stricter safety measures to protect their children. Yet, even that wasn't enough to stop the worst from happening again. Less than a year later, in the summer of 2019, chaos returned to Westfield when Emily Davis, a beloved and prominent student at the high school, vanished without a trace. Even more troubling, Emily was also a student in James Bennett's history class. This case became the tipping point, prompting local police to seek assistance from special investigative units from Central Alabama. Inspector Eric Thompson, who had never given up on the investigation, now felt certain that these 3 disappearances were no mere coincidences. He intensified his scrutiny of James Bennett, studying the teacher's daily routines, habits, and personal relationships in detail. But Bennett remained chillingly calm, meticulously cautious, never leaving behind the slightest trace of wrongdoing. Meanwhile, James Bennett continued living his double life flawlessly. By day, he stood before his class with an amicable smile and warm eyes. By night, he transformed into a cold-blooded predator. He had carefully constructed a secret hideaway, a place where he could indulge his dark desires without detection. After every crime, he meticulously erased all traces, behaving with the precision of an experienced professional. The investigation dragged on with immense difficulties. Eric Thompson's patience wore thin as every lead reached a dead end. The police faced growing pressure from the public. Media outlets throughout Alabama continuously reported on the mysterious disappearances in Westfield, turning this peaceful town into a place notorious for missing young women. Then, on a cold winter morning in 2022, the breakthrough Eric had desperately awaited finally arrived. A hunter accidentally stumbled upon human remains buried carelessly in a forest outside Birmingham. Forensic analysis swiftly confirmed these remains as belonging to Emily Davis. Eric Thompson immediately arrived at the scene. Standing silently, his eyes icy with resolve, Eric knew all too well. This discovery marked the true beginning of his battle against the killer hidden behind the mask of a perfect teacher. Immediately after discovering Emily Davis's remains, the entire Westfield police force mobilized to thoroughly search the forest area where her body was found. Top forensic experts were summoned to the scene, analyzing every tiny detail, desperately hoping to uncover even the faintest clue. The forensic report, swiftly released, sent shockwaves through the town. It revealed that Emily Davis hadn't merely disappeared and died. She had endured severe physical abuse and unimaginable trauma before her death. Though the forensic specialists carefully avoided overly graphic descriptions, the details they provided were enough for the townspeople to grasp the horrifying extent of what Emily had been forced to endure at the hands of a ruthless predator. Inspector Eric Thompson felt immense pressure weighing heavily on his shoulders. This wasn't just an ordinary disappearance. It was a crime committed by a monster hiding beneath a facade of charm, intellect, and a disturbing ability to conceal his crimes. Eric decided to revisit every suspicion raised over the past 5 years, focusing especially on James Bennett. Meanwhile, Bennett continued teaching every day, calm and dignified, as if nothing had happened. But now, his every move and every action were under intense scrutiny by the police. Eric secretly collected surveillance footage, phone and computer records, and conducted additional interviews with colleagues and students. Gradually, small but crucial clues began to emerge, hinting at the chilling darkness Bennett had so meticulously hidden. One female student who had previously attended Bennett's class revealed to police that she once refused his invitation for a private meeting late at night. She vividly recalled the cold, unsettling look in Bennett's eyes when she declined his request. Her statement sent chills down Eric's spine. He knew he was inching closer to uncovering the killer's true identity. Nevertheless, to find evidence strong enough to stand in court, Eric understood that he needed extreme caution. James Bennett wasn't an ordinary criminal. He was a highly intelligent, perverse, and meticulously careful predator. The psychological battle between the seasoned detective and the two-faced murderer was now entering its most intense phase. The investigation into the disappearance of the 3 schoolgirls quickly reached a frustrating dead end. Inspector Eric Thompson and his team scoured every corner of Westfield, thoroughly examining the school, the victims' homes, and locations frequently visited by the missing girls. Despite their relentless efforts, no substantial leads emerged. Interviews with witnesses proved unhelpful. Friends, family members, and acquaintances of the victims were stunned, having seen nothing unusual before the disappearances. Even security cameras around the area failed to capture anything suspicious. Eric Thompson felt growing pressure. He knew that the longer the investigation dragged on, the slimmer their chances became of finding the girls safe. Westfield fell into anxiety and panic. Rumors of an elusive serial killer spread rapidly, unsettling the once peaceful community. But just as Eric was beginning to lose hope, a small yet significant clue emerged. While reviewing the phone and text records of one of the victims, Emily Davis, the police discovered that she had received a mysterious message from an unknown number shortly before she disappeared. The message was vague but chilling enough to unsettle Eric deeply. "Don't forget our meeting tonight. Don't tell anyone." This clue, though seemingly minor, provided the first glimmer of light in the darkness surrounding the investigation. Eric immediately ordered his team to trace the unknown phone number, hopeful that this might finally lead him to the true perpetrator. However, Eric also understood clearly that ahead of him lay a long path filled with danger and horrifying surprises. Eric Thompson immediately ordered his technical team to trace the origin of the mysterious phone number. Initially, it seemed like a promising lead, but reality quickly showed that the person behind this message was far from ordinary. The phone number turned out to be a disposable burner, bought with falsified paperwork and used only once before being discarded. A promising clue had once again become a dead end. Yet, this mysterious text reinforced Eric's suspicion that the culprit was not a stranger, but rather someone closely trusted by the victim, someone Emily felt comfortable enough to meet privately, without suspicion. This realization strengthened Eric's hunch that the perpetrator held a prominent and respected position within Westfield, and James Bennett emerged as the most obvious suspect among such individuals. Eric decided to approach Bennett cautiously, careful not to raise his suspicions or cause alarm. In their next interview at Westfield High, Eric deliberately posed seemingly casual, unrelated questions, aiming instead to gauge Bennett's reactions closely. James Bennett remained exceptionally calm, answering fluidly without hesitation or any visible signs of nervousness. However, just as Eric prepared to conclude the conversation, he noticed Bennett unconsciously adjusting his shirt sleeve as if to hide something, a subtle gesture, yet enough to heighten Eric's suspicion. Eric Thompson left Westfield High School feeling unsettled. His seasoned detective instincts warned him that James Bennett was hiding a significant secret. However, Eric also knew clearly that to prove Bennett's involvement, he would need stronger, more definitive evidence. Ultimately, Eric decided to pursue a risky strategy, secretly observing Bennett outside of working hours, delving into the private life Bennett carefully concealed. Eric was fully aware he was entering dangerous territory. His opponent was not just a typical criminal, but a clever and terrifying predator. Eric Thompson carefully initiated a covert plan to monitor James Bennett's movements. Keeping a safe distance, the seasoned detective began meticulously observing Bennett's every action, hoping to catch even the smallest slip-up. For the first week, Eric found nothing suspicious. Bennett would leave school each afternoon, briefly stop at a convenience store, and then return directly to his quiet apartment. He rarely went out at night, didn't meet anyone suspicious, and appeared to lead an entirely normal, private life. However, one weekend night, just as Eric began to think his surveillance might be fruitless, Bennett unexpectedly left home around midnight. Eric cautiously followed from afar. Bennett drove alone, heading out of town toward an isolated area on the northern outskirts of Westfield. He stopped in front of an old abandoned house at the edge of the woods, an area previously unnoticed by police during earlier investigations. Eric secretly approached, maintaining a safe distance to avoid detection. From a hidden vantage point, he watched Bennett step out of the car, carefully look around, and then enter the dilapidated house. Bennett's flashlight briefly flickered, then disappeared into the darkness. Eric realized he was closer than ever to uncovering Bennett's secret, yet he also fully understood the risks he faced. He immediately called for backup while maintaining secrecy to prevent alerting Bennett. Nearly an hour later, Bennett emerged carrying a large bag, placed it into his trunk, and drove away. Eric patiently waited for Bennett to leave the area before cautiously approaching the abandoned house. Along with his backup team, Eric meticulously searched every corner. In the flickering light of their flashlights, Eric froze when they discovered a hidden room beneath the rotting wooden floorboards. What they found inside sent chills down their spines. Candid photographs of female students, numerous personal belongings, and notably, a delicate necklace engraved with the name Emily Davis. something Emily had always worn before her disappearance. Eric's heart raced. At last, he had discovered the first substantial piece of evidence definitively linking James Bennett to the crimes. A two-faced murderer hidden in the shadows all these years. Yet Eric also understood clearly, from this moment, the real battle was only just beginning. After discovering the hidden room beneath the abandoned house, Inspector Eric Thompson knew he finally held evidence powerful enough to bring James Bennett to justice. However, Eric was fully aware that even the smallest mistake could unravel all their efforts. Bennett was no ordinary criminal. He was dangerously intelligent, always staying one step ahead of the police. Eric immediately called in forensic experts to thoroughly collect all possible evidence from the scene. Every photograph and each personal belonging of the victims was meticulously documented and sent back to the lab for detailed analysis. Preliminary results quickly confirmed that the necklace indeed belonged to Emily Davis. Yet, they still couldn't find any fingerprints or DNA traces of Bennett at the scene. He had been extremely careful. Returning to police headquarters, Eric and his colleagues immediately convened a private meeting to plan their next move. He realized that arresting Bennett immediately might allow him to deny everything convincingly, claiming the entire situation was a setup to frame him. Eric knew they needed stronger, more definitive evidence, something Bennett could not possibly deny. After careful consideration, Eric decided to continue discreet surveillance on Bennett, but this time employing advanced tracking devices. He secretly installed listening and GPS devices in Bennett's car and on his personal phone, while keeping round-the-clock surveillance on his apartment. 1 week later, this strategy finally yielded results. Bennett made a brief, suspicious phone call late at night, his cold voice coming clearly through the surveillance equipment Eric had been closely monitoring. "I think they're watching me. We need to clear out that place immediately." Eric immediately sprang into alertness upon hearing those words. "We?" So, Bennett wasn't working alone after all. An accomplice was still hiding somewhere within the quiet town. Eric took a deep breath, fully aware that the investigation had taken a major step forward, but had also opened up new, unforeseen dangers. Now he was facing not only the clever, ruthless murderer James Bennett, but also an unknown accomplice lurking safely in the shadows, potentially ready to help Bennett escape or even commit further horrifying crimes. The sudden appearance of an accomplice completely redirected the course of the investigation. Inspector Eric Thompson and his team immediately entered a tense race to identify this second individual, the shadowy figure who had helped James Bennett conceal his horrific crimes for years. The secret phone call between Bennett and the accomplice was thoroughly analyzed. Police discovered that the second individual's phone was also an untraceable burner phone, leaving them unable to identify its user directly. However, the conversation revealed one crucial detail. The two planned to meet to clean up a previously unknown location, likely containing leftover evidence of their crimes. Eric swiftly arranged a covert surveillance operation, hoping this meeting would finally reveal the accomplice's identity and bring closure to the entire case. But life was rarely straightforward, especially when dealing with someone as intelligent and meticulous as Bennett. The arranged meeting took place late at night in an abandoned parking lot on the outskirts of town. Bennett arrived first, calm but vigilant, carefully scanning his surroundings. Hidden in the shadows, Eric and his team waited anxiously. Minutes later, another vehicle slowly emerged from the darkness, approaching Bennett. Eric's heart nearly stopped when he recognized a man stepping out of the car. Marcus Powell, a security guard at Westfield High School, who had previously never been considered a suspect. Marcus and Bennett exchanged a few brief words before quickly transferring several suspicious boxes from Marcus's car to Bennett's. Eric instantly signaled his team to move in. Within moments, both suspects were surrounded and had no chance to react. Bennett remained disturbingly calm, saying nothing, while Marcus trembled, frantically looking for a way to escape. As the police opened the boxes, they uncovered numerous personal items belonging to the missing girls, documents, photographs, and pieces of clothing bearing the victim's traces. Bennett remained eerily composed, but Marcus quickly broke down under psychological pressure, insisting repeatedly that he had only helped Bennett hide evidence and had not directly participated in the crimes. Eric stared directly into James Bennett's eyes, seeing no remorse at all. The investigation now had sufficient evidence to press charges, but Eric understood very clearly. With someone as coldly intelligent as Bennett, the real battle was yet to come, inside the courtroom, where Bennett would undoubtedly attempt to manipulate the truth once more. Immediately after being arrested, Marcus Powell was taken straight to the interrogation room. Unlike Bennett's chilling calmness, Marcus appeared shaky, terrified, and visibly panicked. Inspector Eric Thompson seized this opportunity, initiating a sharp psychological battle to fully extract information from the accomplice. "Marcus, I know you're only an accomplice, not the mastermind," Eric started gently but firmly. "If you want any chance of leniency, you must be truthful right now. If you remain silent, I'm afraid James Bennett will find a way to pin everything on you." Marcus looked up at Eric, eyes filled with terror. Shortly after, the first words of confession began to come out reluctantly. Marcus revealed that he and Bennett had known each other closely since their youth, having grown up together in the outskirts of Birmingham, where they'd previously engaged in minor thefts. As adults, they had gone separate ways, but Bennett had always maintained contact. Marcus continued, explaining how a few years earlier, Bennett unexpectedly sought him out, asking for help in cleaning up after an accident, which Bennett claimed was unintentional. Initially, Marcus refused, but Bennett threatened to expose past secrets, forcing him to reluctantly assist in disposing of evidence. When Marcus later discovered that Bennett wasn't responsible for just one incident, but 3 murders, he felt too deep in panic and fear to escape the situation. Marcus's confession was a turning point, providing Eric Thompson with clear evidence not only of Bennett's role in the crimes, but also clarifying many other minor details. Marcus consistently insisted he never directly participated in the attacks, emphasizing that Bennett alone planned and carried out the murders. When the interrogation ended, Eric left the room feeling simultaneously relieved and burdened. He now possessed enough evidence to bring the case to court, yet Bennett's disturbing composure meant he couldn't let down his guard. Eric knew that the upcoming trial would be anything but easy. Bennett had surely prepared extensively to defend himself. Meanwhile, news of James Bennett's and Marcus Powell's arrests spread rapidly throughout Westfield, profoundly shocking the small community. Residents were stunned and outraged, finding it difficult to accept that all this time, they'd lived alongside a monstrous predator disguised as the model teacher they deeply trusted. At this moment, Eric Thompson fully understood he was entering the final, fiercest battle, the fight to prove the truth in court, where James Bennett would undoubtedly play every card he had, hoping once again to manipulate everyone around him. In the days leading up to the trial, the atmosphere in Westfield grew increasingly tense and stifling. Everyone discussed the case relentlessly. Furious and uneasy whispers echoed in cafes and street corners alike. But no one felt this pressure more intensely than Inspector Eric Thompson. He knew James Bennett wouldn't go down without a fight, and that Bennett undoubtedly had a carefully devised plan to sway the court. Inside his cell, Bennett remained disturbingly calm. Prison guards reported that he behaved politely and serenely, showing no signs of panic or anxiety. This composure only heightened Eric's concerns. He was certain Bennett had a detailed strategy ready to unleash during the trial. Eric and his investigative team spent the following days strengthening their case file. They meticulously cross-checked every testimony and examined every tiny detail, determined not to leave any loopholes that Bennett might exploit. Meanwhile, forensic experts continued rigorously analyzing DNA samples and evidence from the abandoned house, hoping to secure decisive proof that could close off any possible escape routes for Bennett. At the same time, Bennett's defense lawyer began making statements to the media, declaring that Bennett was the victim of an elaborate conspiracy. They insisted that Marcus Powell was the real culprit behind everything, exploiting their past connection to entrap Bennett. Although the argument was tenuous, the attorney's persuasive speaking skills and Bennett's composed, dignified appearance started to divide public opinion. Eric realized that the true battle would be psychological, fought in the courtroom. He carefully studied Bennett's psychological profile, consulting criminal psychology experts to prepare the most powerful arguments to expose the true nature of this sophisticated criminal to the public. With only a few days left before the trial officially began, Eric felt the pressure weighing heavily upon him. He understood clearly that if he failed to convincingly prove Bennett's guilt, all their efforts and the victim's hope for justice could vanish in an instant. And as if sensing Eric's tension, Bennett sent a brief, yet ominous message through his attorney. "I eagerly await our final confrontation, Inspector Thompson. I hope you've prepared yourself well." Reading the note, Eric felt a chill run down his spine. The trial hadn't begun yet, but the fierce, final battle had already been set in motion at that very moment. The day of the trial finally arrived, and the atmosphere inside the courtroom was stiflingly tense. Residents of Westfield, reporters from everywhere, and the families of the victims filled every seat, anxiously awaiting the truth to be revealed. Inspector Eric Thompson sat in the front row, composed but tense, his gaze fixed firmly upon the defendant. James Bennett appeared calm and impeccably poised, as always. His eyes remained cold and emotionless as the proceedings began. Bennett's defense lawyer quickly presented their arguments, emphasizing the theory that Bennett had been framed by Marcus Powell, who allegedly manipulated their old friendship and Bennett's goodwill to draw him into a criminal trap. Though weak logically, the defense's compelling presentation managed to instill doubt in the minds of some observers. After the defense rested its arguments, the prosecution presented their evidence and witness testimonies gathered throughout the investigation. They meticulously detailed the discovery of the hidden room in the abandoned house, displayed personal belongings of the victims, and, most critically, shared Marcus Powell's confession. Photographs from the crime scene and forensic test results appeared on a large screen, leaving the courtroom stunned at the extent of Bennett's brutality and cold calculation. Throughout this, Bennett's expression remained unchanged, occasionally whispering something quietly into his lawyer's ear. Suddenly, Bennett asked permission to address the court directly. The judge granted his request, and Bennett stepped forward, confidently facing the courtroom, speaking with calm authority. "I stand here today completely innocent. I am the victim of an elaborate and carefully planned conspiracy. All the evidence presented has been staged to implicate me. Marcus Powell used our friendship to manipulate and frame me." Eric remained silent, struggling to control his emotions as he listened to Bennett speak persuasively and calmly before the jury. Yet, Eric remained steadfast in his trust in the strength of the evidence painstakingly gathered. He understood that this battle wasn't over until the jury delivered their final verdict. When the first day of the trial concluded, Eric left the courtroom feeling drained. He knew that the days ahead would only grow more intense, as both he and Bennett would reveal their strongest cards, determining the ultimate fate of the case and their own. The second day of the trial began with even greater tension than the first. The prosecutor decided to bring Marcus Powell to the witness stand for a direct confrontation with Bennett in front of the entire courtroom. It was a risky but necessary move to clearly demonstrate Bennett's role as the mastermind behind the brutal crimes. Marcus approached the stand nervously, avoiding eye contact with Bennett, his hands visibly trembling. The prosecutor started questioning, urging Marcus to recount all the details he knew about the disappearances and murders of the 3 female students. At first, Marcus hesitated, his voice shaking and eyes darting nervously. But after a moment of silence and encouragement from the prosecutor, he began speaking more clearly. Marcus described precisely how Bennett had contacted, threatened, and forced him to help cover up evidence. The details Marcus provided perfectly matched the evidence police had previously gathered, making his testimony increasingly credible. Bennett's defense attorney immediately challenged Marcus's credibility, emphasizing his criminal past and close relationship with Bennett. He repeatedly tried to pressure Marcus into admitting he was the true perpetrator. Marcus, however, firmly denied these accusations, insisting despite his shaky voice that Bennett was the one who initiated everything, and he had only assisted out of fear. Just as the heated argument reached its peak, the courtroom doors suddenly opened. A middle-aged woman entered, clearly emotional, requesting to testify as an additional witness. Eric Thompson immediately recognized her. It was Linda Carter, mother of Jenny Carter, the first victim. With permission from the judge, Linda stepped onto the witness stand, her eyes red from emotion. She presented a small, old diary, explaining she had recently found it while cleaning her daughter's room. The diary meticulously detailed several occasions where Bennett had privately attempted to approach Jenny, making her deeply afraid and uncomfortable. Complete silence enveloped the courtroom as Linda read aloud each page from the diary. For the first time, Bennett lost his composure, his face growing pale, his previously calm eyes now filled with visible panic. Eric Thompson breathed a quiet sigh of relief. This diary was the critical additional evidence needed to convince anyone still harboring doubts that James Bennett was indeed the true monster. At the end of the second day, the trial was temporarily adjourned. Eric felt slightly relieved, though he knew the battle wasn't over yet. Now, he had to wait for the jury's decision, a decision that would determine Bennett's fate and deliver justice for the innocent girls who had tragically lost their lives due to unimaginable cruelty. The third and decisive day of the trial unfolded in an atmosphere charged with tension and anticipation. After 2 intense days examining evidence and witness testimonies, everyone's attention now focused squarely on the jury, who would determine James Bennett's ultimate fate. Before the jury withdrew to deliberate, the prosecution delivered a powerful closing argument, depicting James Bennett as a cold-blooded predator who skillfully used his position and the community's trust to commit the most horrifying crimes. Meanwhile, the defense attorney continued emphasizing their conspiracy theory, but the weak arguments and lack of concrete evidence were no longer persuasive. When both sides concluded their statements, the jury retired to deliberate. The wait felt endless, and an oppressive silence settled over the courtroom. Eric Thompson felt an immense pressure weighing heavily on his shoulders, while Bennett sat motionless, his face cold and eyes devoid of any discernible emotion. After 3 tense hours, the jury finally returned. The judge instructed everyone to stand. The courtroom fell completely silent as the jury representative spoke clearly and deliberately. "We, the jury, have carefully examined all evidence and testimony. On the charge of first-degree murder, we unanimously find the defendant, James Bennett, guilty." The courtroom instantly erupted into emotional turmoil. Sounds of relief mixed with tears from victims' families filled the air. Eric felt a profound sense of relief after years of relentless struggle. Yet he stood still, watching Bennett carefully. The cold-blooded murderer remained steady, unmoved by the verdict. Restoring order quickly, the judge turned directly to Bennett and delivered the final sentence. "James Bennett, due to the extreme severity and cruelty of your crimes, I hereby sentence you to death." Upon hearing the sentence, Bennett's expression remained disturbingly calm. His lips curved slightly upward into a chilling, defiant smile, as if he had never feared anything, not even death itself. As the trial ended and Eric left the courtroom, he felt the enormous weight finally lifted from his shoulders. Although the battle against Bennett was over, Eric knew the haunting memories of this case would follow him forever. Deep down, Eric understood that the darkness James Bennett had left behind would never be entirely erased from the collective memory of the small town of Westfield. Time passed after the fateful trial, and Westfield slowly attempted to regain some semblance of normalcy. Yet beneath the surface calm, the darkness left behind by James Bennett continued to haunt every corner, every home, and every heart within the small town. Inspector Eric Thompson, though officially finished with the case, often returned to his office late at night. Sometimes he sat quietly, staring at the wall covered with notes from the investigation, pondering everything that had occurred and constantly questioning if there was something he could have done differently to stop Bennett earlier. Even though he knew these questions would forever remain unanswered, he could never stop asking them. One cold winter day, while Eric sat deep in thought, his phone rang unexpectedly. It was Linda Carter, mother of Jenny Carter, the first victim. She called once more to thank him, but also revealed her decision to leave Westfield, as the memories of her daughter and the case were still too painful to bear. Eric understood better than anyone. He wished her peace, though deep down, he knew that no one involved could ever fully heal or forget the loss and sorrow inflicted by the case. Meanwhile, Marcus Powell, who had cooperated with the police and provided crucial testimony, was serving a lengthy prison sentence. Though many still despised him for his complicity, Eric occasionally visited Marcus in prison, trying to better understand the moral decline that had led Marcus to help Bennett. Each time they met, Marcus kept his head bowed, tears silently falling, yet he could never help Eric fully comprehend the true nature of James Bennett, a monster concealed within the facade of politeness and charm. As for James Bennett himself, he calmly awaited his execution. Prison guards reported he spent his days reading history books, maintaining his disturbingly polite demeanor. He showed neither regret for his actions nor fear of his imminent death. It was precisely this eerie calmness that left a lasting impression of dread and unease on all who encountered him. Eventually, Eric Thompson decided to retire after his long pursuit of justice. He moved to a small, secluded house far from Westfield, hoping to find some peace. Yet no matter how far he went, the memories of James Bennett, the cruelty, cunning, and brutality, remained with him, haunting him like an ever-present shadow. Eric realized there were wounds, memories, and horrific crimes so severe that even the passage of time and the fulfillment of justice could not erase their marks. And that was the ultimate truth he had to accept, something he would carry within him for the rest of his life.